Hello, my name is Benjamin J. and I am currently a sophomore at SUNY Binghamton. I would like to thank the judges and everyone for allowing me the opportunity to debate. In my speech, I will address off-case arguments as well as several critiques. Firstly, in your speech, you talk about how we are still benefiting from slavery today. I completely fail to see how the work done by slaves over 200 years ago is making a profit for us today. There's no way that a plantation that used slave labor to harvest cotton hundreds of years ago is putting money into anyone's pockets today. You also mentioned that slaves worked in factories. This is false, as slavery was abolished before real factories came about, so this should not be used. You also brought up that we should rewrite textbooks. Most textbooks that are made today are pretty on point about the slave trade. Also, what would we even rewrite? You don't give any specific things that textbooks wrongly include currently. You also addressed at the Chase Bank and how it lent out money to African Americans. How is this in any way harmful and related to reparations? This, if anything, demonstrates how we try and help African Americans by giving them loans so as they can stay afloat, as you even mentioned. If they can't pay the loans, that's not our problem, but the problem of the individual for making a bad choice or not for being smart enough to pay it on time. Giving reparations to these types of people who take out these loans aren't going to help them. You're hurting them. You're basically teaching them, yeah, take out a huge loan, and if you can't pay it off, it's not your fault, because we'll cover it for you with reparations that are basically coming out of someone else's pocket. At the end of the video, you say reparations should be in a form of payment. What type of payment? Cash, more social programs? You can't just say that they should be paid and then not give a basis about how we should go about this. Let's say that you decide cash should be given to the descendants of slavery. How are you going to determine who is worthy or not? Not in an offensive manner by any means, but are people who have white parents and black parents going to be given a reparation? Why should they? Why should they not? Are they only half deserving because they aren't fully African American? You would never be able to put a real monetary value on for the reparations, largely because you can't even define the boundaries for who is entitled for one. The information we have is just not credible enough to determine whose ancestor was a slave. Let's say you did find the descendants of people who endured slavery. How would you go about demonstrating that these people are suffering today as a result of slavery from almost 150 years ago? On top of that, there are many well-off African Americans who wouldn't even need this reparation and do fine on their own. If you keep giving handouts to people, they become dependent on the government, and it doesn't help these people at all. You also have no evidence that this money would help these people. Let's say you give them a reparation, and instead of attending a better school, they go out and buy a brand new Mercedes. How is this helping them in any way? And how is it solving the wrongs of slavery? You can't know for sure that these reparations are going to be truly helpful and spent wisely. As with the example with the Mercedes, you would simply be giving them a present rather than a means and tools to better their lives because the quote-unquote are harmed by slavery from hundreds of years ago. The other big problem with your argument is that you fail to mention where this money is coming from. If you're wanting the government to hand out what would basically be billions, if not close to trillions of dollars out of the budget, you're depriving our country of the opportunity to fix Social Security, Medicare, as well as other various budget needs that benefit all Americans. This is including the African community as well. So yes, while you would supposedly be helping them, you're in turn actually hurting them along with the rest of the country. These services benefit everyone, and it would be completely unfair to harm the entire country over a plan that doesn't work without severe problems such as the ones I have stated. Since the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the advent of the Great Society of 1965, we've already shelled out trillions in transfer payments that have been made to African Americans in the form of welfare benefits and racial preferences. So basically, we've been giving out reparations for quite some time now. More importantly, why should our government pay the reparations when only a tiny minority of Americans ever actually owned slaves, along with the fact that these people who did own slaves are long dead as well as the slaves they already owned? Most Americans today have no connection to slavery, as most of immigration occurred in 1880 and then again in 1960. So for these Polish, Hungarian, Cambodian, Korean, and other groups to pay reparations to African Americans is completely and utterly unjustifiable and unfair. These people had no connections to American slave owners and they should not have to pay. Slavery was ended almost more than 160 years ago and at the cost of roughly 360,000 Union soldiers' lives that were lost during the Civil War. Why then should these soldiers' descendants not get money? They died fighting for slaves, so shouldn't they be giving compensation and reparations for their deeds? See, it never ends because you can always argue that someone else is deserving of reparations. The source of where the reparations would come from and who they would go to are way too undefined. There's no single group responsible for the crimes of slavery, nor one single benefactor from the slave trade. You can tie in European superpowers at this time as well as the people of their own African countries. Why then should our government alone have to pay reparations? These other countries and people are attributed just as much. The timeline in which slavery takes place is over a broad period of time, and the documents are too unreliable to know who exactly is a descendant of slavery. Once that big hole is resolved, then we get back to the real question that has never been answered. How much is to be given, and to who? We still haven't been told what terms someone has to meet to qualify. The whole point of giving out a reparation would be to solve the harms from slavery, and by giving them a monetary amount, I don't think that can be truly proved that this will benefit them. Thank you.